Welcome back to the Raised Hunting Podcast. How are you guys today? Again, joining me.
Good. I'm doing pretty well.
I wasn't asking you. I was asking them, the viewer. Okay, so you don't count, so keep your mouth shut until I introduce you. You're not here yet.
That was aggressive.
Okay, that's because I've had enough of this. All right?
I like it. Get her going.
Okay, so, and joining me today is Warren and Easton.
Hello. How are you guys doing today?
That's where it's supposed to come in. Warren,
What?
address the viewer.
Hello.
Goofballs. All right, so today's topic is really pretty freaking cool. Well, but anyhow, long story short, there's two of them now because I just got another one that I want to mention.
Well, we got to shout out people.
Okay, well, hang on. Let me introduce the topic, then we'll do the shout-outs.
Okay.
Topic today is going to be reading deer and secondary rut. Someone asked a question about the secondary rut. And so Logan Matson and Dan Pohl are the two guys that we're kind of targeting today. Thank you guys for your input. I don't know what you want to call it.
Shouting out.
They better hope Easton's hunting them.
I don't know.
He didn't do any better.
I killed a deer.
So did I.
Only by default.
Okay.
How's that? How would that even make sense?
Yeah, I don't know.
The deer finally just said somebody walk in front of him because he's not going to go away.
Exactly. That's called.
Was
Yep.
that not the conversation we
Warren
had?
said they got you against the locker, and you know what? It's more annoying to a bully than anything is when you just won't quit.
Yeah, you just keep coming.
Yep.
I've said this a million times. I'm not that good a hunter. I just time them to death.
Yeah.
They finally give up.
I think that was really good advice at that point. I was like, look, we keep trying to think this and make it all make sense, and the only thing that we can make sense is that
It
at
doesn't
this
make
point,
sense.
we just aren't going to quit. There's no point in quitting now. We've already done 95% of it, so we're just going to annoy the shit out of these suckers until one of them decides to die.
All right.
He decided.
So who are we shouting out today? Is this the Spotify guys or the Apple guys or a combination of both? Or?
Spotify guys just keep crushing it. They are sailing way over 200 reviews, so we got to just love those guys. And then Gary Bateman on Apple Podcasts, and then Cat Adam. I'm not sure if this is Catum or Cat Adam, 93285. Jeez. He says, found this podcast last week and love it. Listen to it nonstop now. And then we got to shout out Love and Life 139 on YouTube. So we've been doing, he says, what about us little old YouTube viewers? I notice y'all never interact with the comment section. Got y'all's nose up the butts of folks of other platforms, though. So
we are very bad about remembering about YouTube.
That's why I made sure to just comment, because we'll take ownership that we suck at checking the YouTube comments. Then somebody answered and said, you can go through their videos, et cetera, and see plain as day that they don't entertain the comments and should have comments just turned off because they never replied to my comments or anyone else's for that matter. However, I can't say that is not true, because there's several that you can go through and I can tell you that I've replied to. But
we also
I'm going
like
to give you this.
Hold on.
We should be doing a better job of
say we like to answer
because I didn't even know that this existed on YouTube. So
that's your own fault. Go listen to podcasts.
You still think Spotify is Shopify. So,
right. So,
I mean,
but my point is, if I go into YouTube, I could see comments and I could comment on just the podcast portion of it.
No
correct?
crap.
Yes.
No, I'm asking that question.
Yes.
Okay, I can do that.
Anyways, what I was going to say to
Okay,
everybody
problem
is
solved, everyone.
YouTube, FYI, a lot of the people that do ask questions, we don't respond to the comment necessarily directly to that, because a lot of times it gives us a topic. So a lot of our spot, now you got me saying Shopify, our Spotify and Apple Music people, well, Apple Podcasts, I guess, that sends them in, whether it's a comment or sometimes they'll send it to us directly. We use them as a podcast.
I think we
I'll answer saying, hey, we're going to use it as a podcast or it's going to go on the list. But I don't normally necessarily answer the actual question.
We'll need to do another giveaway soon, and we'll have to make sure that we really take care of the YouTube guys.
Do you remember our rap guy's name?
We've been butt sniffers for the other platforms.
What do you guys remember the rapped name?
Eminem.
No, David.
Oh no, you're the one that sent it.
I cannot handle your crap sometimes.
What?
Who is the guy that posted it?
Now our retention just dropped through the floor.
Nope.
I can't. I am in a bad mood now.
So
Oh
what?
jeez. You just don't like it because the deer think you are queer?
Ooh, look, he
Oh,
did.
it was Logan. It was Logan. Logan Matson. We're using your podcast today, or we're using your topic today.
He already said
I
that.
already said
Okay,
that.
so let's
listen, and
discuss
he
it.
is also the one that posted his Wrapped because we are in the top of his podcast listens. So
Be the
thank
man.
you for that too. Holy crap! Screw me for trying to appreciate our people.
You guys
Awkward
are weird.
silence.
Weird.
Cricket.
All right, so Logan, his comment was, last week we kind of touched on it, and then we got off on a tangent, and we didn't go back to it.
We never started it.
No, I mentioned that we were going to talk about reading deer, and not like a book, not like flipping a page.
You got to drop the dad jokes today.
Okay, we're going to read
They're
deer.
awful.
So-
Such a Sour Patch Kid.
Anyhow, Logan's question was, how do you know when can you tell whether there's a deer that you should rattle at or that you should grunt at, or which one should you do? So there's different levels of reading deer is what I would say. Number one, sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you have to take a guess and throw something at them when you got nothing to lose. That's one of the things that I try to tell everyone. I carry my antlers and I carry my grunt call from day one, from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. And that is because if I get into a situation where I have a buck that's walking away or walking by and I got nothing is going to hurt, it's a perfect time, wind's in the right direction, that would be one of the biggest ones that I would tell Logan or anyone else, that if the deer is downwind of you, don't do anything. I don't care how much you want to, or if they can get downwind very easily, they're headed that way. The last thing that you want to do is throw a call of any sort at them, because all they're going to do is wind you, and then when they wind you, and they're going to associate winding you with the sound they just heard, and the next time they hear that sound, they're not coming.
This would be the first year that because I've never been, like, I don't carry my antlers from day one. I normally carry them like two weeks into the season, somewhere in there. And this would be the first year that I would probably have been like, well, I probably should just carry them just in case. Because I think that your non-common times of calling, so like when, like during the rut, obviously, or right around it, bucks are fighting. Bucks are grunting, bucks are doing all this, that, the other, whatever. Before that and after that, I think is sometimes the best times to do it, because they aren't hearing it all the time. So they're not running over here, running over there, checking this or checking that, or, oh, it's just another fight kind of thing. It's like, oh, that's out of the ordinary. Why are they fighting right now? I'm going to go check it out. And this year on October 9th, I watched two bucks just go ham on each other. That I think that, and then two other bucks came to them because of it. So that's way, way early. And I normally wouldn't have thought of, oh, have antlers with me, or thinking of it. But in that case, I think that they're like, why are you guys getting ready so early? And it's not like they were going to be mad or like educated if I were to rattle at them. They would either came to it, or they would have been, oh, I don't really care.
Or not
why
come to it.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying that it's not going to hurt anything. Genuinely, like, what is it hurting?
It's the only two possible options.
No, you could alert them, and they could run away.
Right, which would be not coming.
No, I'm talking about they just keep doing their thing. They don't really care.
Which I think that's kind of funny, because I think the three of us are probably completely different on calling at all. Just our viewpoints on it.
I do it a lot.
Yeah. I hate it.
I know.
I don't hate it. It just, one, I can't seem to rattle a deer in to save my life. And then two, I think when I'm chasing an individual deer, my odds of being able to rattle in that one particular one, I like my odds of trying to figure out what he's doing and jump him more than I do trying to call him in. Now, like, sure, if I'm in a position where he's close by and I need him to close that last little gap, I'll try it. But I'm still nervous about it.
The Big 8 sold me. Now I saw him. I could see him. But I waited till he walked out of sight. As soon as he walked out of sight, I hit the antlers, and here he came back.
What was the date of that, though?
Like November 7th or
November
9th.
7th.
It was either 7th or 9th. I get them messed up with straight up. Straight up was which one? The 9th, and I think he was the 7th. But
That time period, I'd rattle, too. If it was like October 25th, I probably wouldn't.
That's when I've killed 2 that way, though.
I know you have. You kill them in that window with rattling, but I've never killed. I don't think I've ever killed a single deer from rattling.
If I'd simply take my last six bucks I've killed, 50% is rattling.
Yeah.
3 of them were, 3 of them weren't. And the 3 that were came running.
Now,
Alyssa is the best rattler, whatever the hell you'd call that, I've ever seen.
Yeah, she does rattle.
She typically hits the antlers, and it every flipping time.
Maybe it's a woman's finesse.
I think it's because she goes for like 3 minutes. She goes for a really long time. Because I remember the first time I was like, I was about to do the significant other thing and be like, you're rattling way too long. Yeah. And then here comes 2 or 3 bucks. I was like, all right, maybe I'm going to keep my mouth shut here for a minute. Next day, same flipping thing. And every time she just...
I think when you're rattling, unless you can see them and be able to see how they're interacting, this is probably going to be a very opposite take. But I think when you are rattling, and for instance, blind rattling, 9 times out of 10, you're not rattling long enough. I think everybody's paranoid of the movement and rattling too much and stuff, and they rattle for 15, 20, 30 seconds kind of thing, and expecting that to be, okay, the deer's going to turn on a dime and come to it. If you watch them interact with each other, there's lots of times where I've watched bucks fight for a good amount of time, and nothing is going on until maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes into them fighting, another one shows up. Because it convinces them enough that, okay, they're really going at it for something.
But you got to be careful, though, because...
I'm not going to rattle for 6, 7 minutes, but I would rattle longer than the average person.
The 6, 7 minutes isn't that's like them screwing around, in my opinion. Because when they're getting it, it's like a minute tops.
I watched it this year, and they did it 2 or 3 different times, and they were not playing around. They were flat out drilling each other.
For 6 minutes straight.
They would go on for about a minute or 2, and then you're like, oh, they're done. And then give it another 30 seconds, boom, hammering again, and they did it 3, 4 different times where I finally stopped filming because it was so long, and they were not playing with each other, not even a little bit.
I was saying 6 minutes straight.
I'm talking about you have a sequence of 6 minutes. I'm not saying actually do it that long, but watch your deer. Pay attention to them.
Read the deer.
They're not doing it for 20 seconds.
We haven't answered any of that.
I know.
What is reading the deer? What are you looking for?
Okay, but I want to go to what Easton's talking about, because it's one thing I want as much realism as I possibly can when I'm rattling. I want to sound like I'm actually trying to think of what would it sound like. And so I probably rattle a little longer than most people as well. But at the same time, if I see a deer responding, you need to put the antlers away, because those suckers will pinpoint the tree that you're in and come directly to that tree, and that's not necessarily what you want.
That's not what you want at all.
You want them to come in the area and look around. I can remember I don't know if he was one of the first ones, but the buck we killed at the 80 that day, I rattled at the first buck, I remember, that was coming across the field, and I kept rattling, and he pinpointed us and turned around and left. And I'm like, gosh dang it, I rattled too long. So then all of a sudden, here comes the buck that I ended up shooting. As soon as I saw him turn and respond, that he had heard I put the antlers away, and this time he came all the way into 30 yards and looked around, and I think I shot him at like 25 yards walking by us.
Yeah, it's a whole different ballgame, though, when you can see them.
Absolutely.
I can see them, and I see them. If I'm calling at them and they commit, then I'm done. And unless there's some random something happens or they get distracted or something. But if they turn like they heard it and they're coming, no more. Because they as long as they're far enough away, or I don't know, away enough that they don't know exactly what tree it came from, they're going to come in and most likely give you some form of opportunity, because they're going to come looking for it, versus what you're saying, calling too much. Well, but that's reading the deer right there. That's assuming you can see them when you're calling.
Yes. Now, the other thing that I'll do is I'll stick my antlers on the other side of the tree a lot of times, meaning for 2 reasons. One, they don't see them clashing around. And number 2, get that sound a little farther away and try and throw it off just a little bit of some sort, so they don't pinpoint exactly where they're coming to.
Yep.
But when we're talking reading the deer, I guess I think we're on a great part of the topic here, and that is reading deer that we're calling to. But then there's reading deer that we want to shoot, and I think we'll cover both of those.
Yeah, I think before you even get to that, let's go over the what makes you decide that you're going to call to a deer when you're looking at his body language. You're just looking at him and how he's behaving. What makes you think, okay, I'm definitely going to call it this deer, or I'm not going to call it this deer?
My number one reason for not calling is wind. Number one. It's not. I'm not reading the deer. I can have the exact same. I could have a deer. Number one.
But let's say you have a deer that is out in the field. Okay.
Okay.
And he's just in the food plot feeding, and then some does run off, and now he seems really nervous. He just seems really nervous, on edge, but you're getting close to dark, and so you're afraid he's going to go back in the woods, and this is the deer that you're trying to shoot. Are you going to call at that deer?
Probably not.
Okay, why?
Because I don't think I have enough. If it's starting to get dark, the response time that it may take, I'm going to get his attention, and I've now got his attention on me.
Okay.
And I don't think that I want to have enough time for him to be able to get there, because a lot of times this doesn't happen in 30 seconds. It does happen once in a while, and that's great. But typically, it may take 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes for a buck to.
Okay, so let's say there's an hour before dark.
Okay.
Are you going to call at him or not? And then when you are deciding that, I want you to tell me what are you looking at on his body? What is he doing? What is his body language telling you that gives you the indicator to call or not?
Well, the first one that I'm looking for, I'd love to see the deer make a scrape or do something of that nature, or rub a tree or something that tells me he's somewhat aggressive. If he's just standing around, I'm probably not going to rattle at him, because if he's out in a food plot or out in a field, and then there's a very likely opportunity of him seeing me, or being able to just turn his head and look at where is that coming from. I should be able to see what I'm looking for. The whole element that
should you grunt at him first, and then because maybe it's not as clear that he might not be able to hear it as well.
I would like to. I would like you to direct answer questions to me too, because I have answers for this. I disagree.
Angry boy.
The chances of having a buck come out into a field that is gonna basically tell you he's aggressive, to call at him is gonna be.
That's what I'm saying.
Slim. The chance, as long as they are calm, and I can get away with something, I'm not worried about my own movement. I'm not worried about the fact that they're alert. So in the situation you're saying that all the does run out of the field, I'm probably not. If he stays, all the does ran out, and he stays in the field and he is nervous, I'm letting him be for a little bit, especially if I have time. I'm going to see if, number one, if he starts leaving the food plot, I'm letting him go. Number two, if he starts feeding again, if he starts feeding like whatever, I don't really care what those does are doing, I'm staying out here anyways, I'm going to let him get comfortable again, and then I'm going to call to him. Because if you have no chance of him coming over to me, I'm not going to, number one, educate him with the does running off and him not knowing what's going on. So if I can get him back in his natural state where he was already out in the food plot doing his thing, he clearly doesn't care too much about why the does ran off. So now I'm going to try to pique his interest. Now, at the same time, in the wide open field, same thing. If they're out there, I don't care if they're making a scrape. I don't care if they're making a rub. If they're doing their thing, feeding, chasing a doe out there, checking does kind of thing, I'm going to try to get their attention. I'm not going to wait for them to try to show me an aggression, because for all I know, they could be aggressive one day, the next day they don't give a crap.
Okay. So is what I'm trying to do, and I think that you're providing indications that a deer may come in. So what I'm trying to do is help us paint a picture to answer the question, which the question is reading their behavior. And so what that means is what the deer is doing, right? So you guys are both speaking from, you already understand. Okay.
I'm trying to paint a picture of what your situations are.
Right. And so what I'm saying is if he is halfway out in the field and he's stiff-legged, meaning he's really tense and he's looking around, his head's up all the time, he's turning and he's checking the wind constantly, that to me is an alert deer.
Yeah, he's nervous.
If he's kind of doing the stiff-legged walk and he's just checking everything, that's a nervous deer to me. So that's what I'm trying to get to, is what are the things that you're looking for in there that their body is telling you? What are the things that their literal body language is giving you indicators of, is what we're talking about now. I think it's
a podcast. This is why I
right,
want to
but
take
we can
the topic and illustrate literally, because showing the deer is a whole nother story, because I can't tell you everything that I'm reading.
Then I got to
show it.
You have to turn your tongue into a
paintbrush
and paint a picture as though I just did. Everybody knew exactly what I was talking about when I said a stiff-legged deer and he's got his head up and he's checking the wind.
That deer you're never calling to.
But
okay.
At the same, your other side, your stiff-legged deer that's walking, I could also argue the fact that okay, he could possibly be posturing up to another deer.
How are we gonna know
And
that?
then I'm
though?
gonna
How am
call-
I gonna know that? Because there's
Bristled
one.
he's
up.
bristled
hair
up.
stands up.
So
And
painting the picture of just stiff-legged doesn't
No,
give you much.
Everybody know now. People probably know what a bristled up deer looks like,
If
right?
they look puffy, they're probably pissed.
Yeah.
Well,
so if you have a deer that is doing a stiff-legged walk,
The other thing about the stiff-legged, so stiff-legged walk is almost stomping the ground. That's them using their interdigital gland to let everyone know there's something wrong. The walk you're talking about is a sideways walk. When they become posturing is referring to a deer, ears are laid back, head is down, aggressive look, like almost pushing their antlers forward as they walk into another deer. That would be an aggressive pose of a deer.
yes.
And most deer, that is how they solve altercations right there. They get to that point, and then it never gets to the point of them actually clashing. You know.
So would that be a deer that you'd want to call to?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yes.
This dude is like on fire. You know, he wants to beat up on everyone. You're looking for the one that's got one eye, half his rack is broken.
So let's take a scenario. Let's say that this two bucks get in a fight, right? And they don't just pansy around. They fight.
Yep.
And one gets beat, but you'd shoot the loser too. Would you call to the loser, or are you not calling to him because he just got his ass
You'd
kicked?
shoot them both.
You'd shoot either one.
I'm calling.
Well,
But I'm more so like, let's just say the loser is your target buck. Okay, so take the winner out of the picture. Let's say he's got a hot doe or whatever the instance is. Do you call to the loser? Will he come in, or are you afraid to call to him because he just got his ass kicked?
I have an opinion that I don't know how
well,
valid it is.
I'm going to say I have a scenario. I mean, we had that happen,
I-
although it wasn't a shooter, and that was the Big 8. We watched him and that other buck fight, and when that other buck came out, I did not want to call to him because I was afraid he would come. But at the same time, because remember, he came out and rubbed the same tree that the Big 8 rubbed.
Yeah.
And so, but at the same time, had that been a shooter, would I have thrown a call at him and hope that if it's not going to hurt me, I'm probably going to try.
Yeah, but you would think, if you think about this,
He's
just
going
got
to be
his butt
reluctant.
kicked. He's either what are your options? If he just got his butt kicked, he's either going to respond to the fight that he's hearing now in multiple ways. He could avoid that spot because he's like, I am not dealing with another conflict right now. So now you just hurt yourself because he's going the other way, or he's going to avoid you completely, or he might not care, or there's not that. So that one, there is a genuine downfall too, or could be, because he could see that with okay, I'm not going to go over there now at all because there's fighting and I'm not fighting again right now.
I think that's where it depends on the demeanor of the deer. Because I've seen a few that Alyssa, of course, rattled in, that after they got their ass kicked, they didn't give a shit.
They were ready to go again.
Yep, they're like, all right, well, I may not have beat his ass,
Mm-hmm.
but I might be able to beat one of your guys's. And here he came.
What I'd be doing if it was in the situation of it being a specific deer I'm trying to hunt, because I don't want that to happen when I don't know how they're going to interact after losing a fight like that. If I want to give myself a shot, I might rattle or something lightly. Make it where it's not very easy to tell, where he can at least, I know that he can hear it, but I'm not expecting him to turn and come running in. All I'm doing is expecting him to know that something's going on over there in hopes that in 15, 20, 30 minutes, he's like, all right, and circles in somewhere where he's going to come check it out. Because a lot of times when you do rattle or you make some kind of call, it could be 30 minutes afterwards because they heard it. They just aren't coming right now. They're going to come check it out in a minute or come sniff around and see who is there.
Yep. Okay, so now let's take a next scenario. Now we're in a food plot. You're off of the food plot a little bit, so they can't see right to you, okay? And a good buck comes out, one you'd like to shoot. He walks out into the field. He's not displaying any signs of dominance. He's not chasing does around. He's just feeding, okay? He's calm, just feeding. That's all he's doing. You know, his body language would tell you that he's relaxed. Now this deer, what are you doing?
Is this going to be all calling situations?
Well, I think that was first off. I'm just trying to say because now when you call, you guys are going to call the deer, right?
I'd call to him.
I
Okay.
would.
You're not going to?
I don't like calling to them when I know they have a very good chance of seeing where it's coming from.
Okay, 50-50.
do you mean 50-50?
We're off the food plot a little bit, so he can't see that well.
Okay.
Actually, we're going to go not even 50-50. He can't see that well. He's 150 yards out there, and you're in the timber enough that like he'd have to at least come over.
I'm throwing a call at that deer.
Okay. So now this is the body language part. What are you looking for of a response from that deer to tell you to either quit calling, keep calling, or that to change calls, or to what are you looking for out of that deer's body language?
Ears and ass. That's what I watch to see if they twitch their ears, if they turn their head and look at me, then I know they heard me. I really want to see if at all I can see the deer, and we're fortunate a lot of times with a camera guy. I'll tell them, you stay on the deer and tell me what he does.
Okay, so let's just go through the typical scenario. I'm the deer. You guys are rattling first, is that right?
At 150, it depends on distance.
Okay,
but I'm not going to go in straight into
presenting.
Okay,
I'm going to stop.
That's what they
wait.
do. I'm going to sit. He's probably going to put his head up and stare your direction. Do you keep calling?
Nope.
No.
Okay, why not?
Because now he'll pinpoint where it's coming from.
Whether
so I'm waiting for him to
just hear it that way.
I want him to lose interest a little bit. I want him to maybe I didn't hear what I thought I heard, and start to turn his head. In the moment that he turns his head, I'm going to hit him again.
Okay.
And that's what I'm watching for. And what I can tell you this, when I say ears or ass, what I'm talking about is when I see them twitch their tail, that typically when they take a step and they're twitching their tail, they're almost like, I'm letting you know I'm coming over there.
Yep. Okay, so then let's just say you do this 2 or 3 more times. He keeps looking, but he doesn't move. Are you going to switch calls?
You've done it multiple times and he hasn't?
He'll keep looking, and he kind of acts like he's interested, but he won't really commit. He won't do anything. He'll stand there and look over and just keep staring at you, but then he just goes back to feeding.
I'm done.
You're not going to grunt or snort wheeze at him?
I would. I'd throw one more at him.
Right, because
but I would wait.
Which call is next?
Only one. I'm throwing one at him that I know he's going to hear, and it's going to be a snort wheeze. I'm going to wait for him to start to really lose interest. Like if I'm waiting for him to put his head down and then I hit antlers again and he's still not, he just looks, I'm going to let him do his crap. He clearly doesn't care that much, but now I'm going to single him out specifically. And I'm doing it once, and if he still puts his head back down and whatever, leave it.
It is interesting how on the very last day in the morning, Alyssa and I hunted. We had a buck come by, and I grunted at him and tried everything, and he was a mature deer. He's probably 5, and this 8, and I grunted at him, did everything I could. He wouldn't do anything. I snort wheezed at that sucker and called him in 3 times, and he just wouldn't come out from behind the thick stuff. But he came right in. He was obviously a stupid deer because he could see everything, and then he'd walk back. I'd let him get to like 45, 50, and I'd snort wheeze at him again, and here he'd come again. Grunt, though, rattling, he didn't care at all. That was obviously way later in the season.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If in the situation that he keeps looking and doesn't care at rattling, when I'm rattling at him, then I'm going to one call that he knows is at him, and he's either going to nut up or shut up. And he's either going to keep doing his thing and mosey on, or he's going to turn around and be like, all right, you really want to push this. Let's do it.
Yep. The other thing I've seen that seems kind of interesting to me is I've seen them where they'll, just start, feeding your way and just taking their time. And then all of a sudden, they hit, a certain point, and it's like, okay, I'm not worried about feeding anymore. And here they come.
Over there.
Yep.
I could give you one that was the most difficult I've ever had, and he did that, was fraying. I had this buck come into 16 yards, and then I had him come into 5 yards this year, and I could not shoot him either time. I know that sounds freaking crazy, but I could not shoot him. There was no hole, or he was giving me terrible angles. And the first time he showed up, I saw him 100 yards walking he was a ways away from us, 100 yards, but walking up the hill away from us. And I grunted at him because I wanted to see if he could at least hear the grunt. He didn't act like he could hear anything. So I just rattled at him a little bit. I was just going to give him enough for him to turn and make sure he could hear it and then hang him up. And he turned and listened and then put his head back down and turned and looked again. And I hadn't rattled again. And then he just kind of lost interest. And so I had told Joey with that situation because I couldn't tell exactly what he was doing. I said, he's either going to keep doing his thing. He's really focused on trying to find a doe up there or something, or we'll give it 15, 20 minutes. I bet you he circles back around. Well, 10 minutes go by, and next thing you know, he's popped up over here now in front of us at like 60 yards. And I'm thinking he's circling, like he's going to come check out what was going on. And instead of him doing anything that presents me opportunity to read what he's doing, he'll sniff around like he's sniffing for a doe or something. He's walking slow as can be and feeds around a little bit. He'll start to go to the right like he's going to leave and feed around. You're like, dang it. And then he'll turn around opposite direction, come right back. And this deer never presented any consistency in body language whatsoever, because even when he got to 50 or 60 yards, looks like he's gonna go by us, and we're never gonna have a shot. And I grunted at him, he doesn't pick his head up. Grunted at him again, doesn't pick his head up. I said, "You piece of crap!" And I freaking snort wheezed at him, doesn't pick his head up. And I know he can hear it. So now I'm like, okay, I got nothing else for this deer. Well, he kept doing his little zigzag feeding thing, slow as can be, and ends up turning and comes into 16 yards. So the deer, I had no way to read him whatsoever. And he did not give me any opportunity to read him whatsoever. But he was interested. There was just no way to tell he was interested. But he ends up at 16 yards.
Well, the fact that he was walking towards you.
He wasn't. He never freaking did. He would go back.
How did he get to 5 yards then?
That was after the doe. He came into 16 on that one.
How did he get to 16?
Obviously, because he is coming in because he is interested. I'm saying he never showed of interest because he feeds, and he's not giving you any representation of, oh, hey, I acknowledge that you're there, or I heard you, and I'm going to come towards you. It was simply he could hear a grunt, and a minute later he's still walking away and then turns around and keeps feeding. And when I say excessively slow, I mean like when deer are out in a field, when their head is down and they're feeding an inch at a time. That's what he was doing.
See, that would tell me that Dagger done whooped his butt, and so he was just trying to be very cautious about where he was going, and
was first.
Yeah, no need to
Would
get.
you like
no,
me to throw
no
a
need
wrench
to,
in that one too?
Sure.
Because I thought the same thing, and then he turns around and comes and runs about 4 or 5 other bucks off, and is snort wheezing at them, grunting at them. Once he got a doe, he has a doe, and now not another deer will even look at him. They try to get close, and then the moment he picks his head up and looks at them, they're running. And
They weren't Dagger though.
No, I'm just saying that you'd think that a buck that is that scared of other bucks would not be that dominant to other deer.
No, chicks change things, man.
That's what I'm saying.
So
it throws a whole wrench into things of him being aggressive or not.
But so that would be the other one. So reading a buck that is following a doe, it ain't happening.
Yeah, you better be in the path.
You can throw the kitchen sink at him, and unless she comes by, he ain't coming off there.
Yep. Not even worth your time.
But I don't know. I mean, so here's what I would tell someone. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I did a lot of calling, way more than I do now. And now I don't do near as much because wind is such a prevailing factor for me that if I think that, number one, if it's not a buck I want to kill, I don't want to call to him because I don't want him to come in and get educated. So I end up passing up all these opportunities to call at bucks. I don't do a lot of blind rattling. I do some, but when going back to the scenarios that you were throwing at us, if I got an open field and I got a deer that's anywhere around, or I can see this deer, I would prefer that the deer walk out of sight. I would like for them to walk out of sight before I hit the antlers, because I feel like, and the Big 8 was a perfect example. I had all the time in the world. It's getting toward the evening, and he's walking by the food plot. He did not come down in. He was up on the hill, and he was going across, but I knew it is him. I knew it's the shooter that I'm looking for. And I told Brendan, we're going to let him go. He's like, what? And I was like, we're going to let him get out of sight. When he gets out of sight, then I'm going to hit the antlers. And then because I was terrified that all he would do is look down in that food plot and go,
I wouldn't have killed that deer.
I don't see the deer that I should see.
Yeah, you got to make them look for it. It's just the same reason we have collars for elk.
If
absolutely.
You're wanting to paint pictures for that situation specifically, you're in an open food plot that is in a bottom, and he is coming across a hillside that's 70, 80 yards in front of you, and the hillside isn't. He can see into the field.
We're in a double bull blind.
Yep, and your double bull blind is just on the edge of the food plot. There's not trees or anything by it. He can, from where he is at, he can see the whole entire food plot. So that situation right there is totally different from somewhere where they're 70 or 80 yards and they can't see to you.
Correct.
So that one right there, you got to let him go.
Right.
Because otherwise, I did that with Elway last year. even though I didn't want to. He was at pretty much the same exact situation or setup, and he was facing away from us. And it was the one deer I was looking for, and I just was like, I don't know what to do because he's gonna walk away. And by the time he walks away, I know there's no chance he's coming back that day at least. And I rattled at him, and he did exactly what I could have predicted he was gonna do. He came back about 20 yards to where he could see the entire bottom that we were sitting in, and looked around for a little bit. Didn't see anything. I'm good. Turned around and walked away.
So we want to go into the second portion of this
Sure.
that you were talking about? Because I think that, in my opinion, obtaining the ability to really read and understand animals is probably the single most beneficial skill to a hunter.
To a bow hunter.
Yeah, absolutely.
I tell everybody that asks about like what is the strongest thing that can make you a good hunter. The thing that separates you from being a good hunter and a great hunter is understanding body language. And I think that I would be happy to die on that hill.
I think it'd be a tough one to fight.
Yeah.
And here's the thing too with it is I don't know that this podcast will help with because I don't know if it can be taught.
Teach it.
I mean,
You
it's
gotta
just
see
flat
it.
experience.
I was going to say that with our or what we're saying here does not help that much. And that my biggest tip was going to be, as stupid as it sounds, pay attention to how they're interacting with other deer, not when you're affecting how they're acting. But like literally sitting and watching a field where you can watch a fawn interacting with a doe, or a doe running from a buck, or a buck interacting with another buck or another doe. Take notes of their little mannerisms and things that they're doing when something else is coming or when they're paying attention to something. That's going to be your quickest. It ain't going to be quick, and it's going to be the best way of learning.
It'll ingrain in you, if you're a bow hunter, it's because you love hunting. You're going to be paying attention to those things. And we're not saying we're great hunters or anything. All we're saying is we've realized that
just done it a lot.
The amount of time that we've spent and being able to pick up on those little things has helped us a lot in certain situations.
And because
openly pay attention to it, because you will pick up on it a lot quicker than just hunting in general.
Well, because the tipping point with a bow and arrow is getting to full draw.
Yep.
I mean, and if you can't read the deer, if you don't understand when you need to draw or when you can draw, when you can't, because there's times when an animal can flat ass see me, and I draw my bow.
Would be a good. We should describe a couple of those.
Well, I think
people.
I have a perfect one.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it was like the 28th or the 29th. I was taking Alyssa hunting, my fiance.
November?
Yeah, of November. And we had an unbelievable sit. Tons of deer everywhere. And we had, and it was one of those where I just knew one of the shooters was going to show up just because we'd seen every other deer on the entire place. And so here's the situation. We've got deer behind us, got deer in front of us, and I'm standing up filming. This is one of those things where you don't sit. She asked me twice, I'm going to sit down. I said, no, you're not. You're standing up. And because we had so many deer. And then I look over, and here comes another deer, and this one's a shooter. This is a RJ. He's a big deer. And he comes right over, and now there's a deer right in front of her that is a spike. And he's at like 22 yards. And then there's another doe at like 50. And then there's another little buck to the right of him at like 30. And the shooter is about 45 yards coming right at us. And so I'm telling her, grab your bow. And she's like, there's a little buck. And I was like, grab your bow. And so finally she grabs her bow, and the little buck sees this. However, and is what I'm thinking, is she managed to get her bow, and then he gets to 20 yards. And the little buck saw her grab her bow, but at least now she's got her bow in her hand, and he's at 20 yards. And
did he run away or did he stay? The little buck.
He just looked.
Okay,
right?
He's still there, though.
Yep,
right?
he's still there, and he's looking at us. Like, he's got us pegged for sure. And so she's still concerned about him. Me, at this point, if I was in her same shoes, I know that this little buck is probably going to do a little goofy runoff or something here in a minute. And as soon as he does that, I'm going to draw, right? And he does that. So he's decided, okay, I'm not going to keep staring at this thing. I'm just going to kind of run off. And when he does that, what does RJ do? He picks up, because he was quartered to us. There's no way she could have shot anyways. And the deer ended up being a little too far for her. He was at like 30. Well, he came to 20, then he was messing around. He was at 30. Anyways, he's looking at us, and then he turns when he sees this little buck do that. I would have drawn right at that moment and I could have killed that deer. I think a lot of people would be afraid to either grab their bow or afraid to draw because of those other deer there. And in that instance, I think that to me, if I've got the deer that I've been trying to kill for the entire year, I'm going to risk it. But at the same time, it wasn't a risk to me because I had a pretty good idea how those deer were going to behave, even if they did see something, that I was still going to have enough time, and that RJ did not know what was going on.
Right. So therefore you have an idea of how he's going to react. Even
Right.
if the little buck does, you're anticipating the little buck's going to have an issue.
Yep.
You know, see, to me, you change that little buck to a doe, a mature doe, we got a little bit worse of a situation on our hands because RJ probably is going to respect her. Oh, there's something wrong. Spike, a lot of times, they're not gonna freak from that. They may watch him like, what are you worried about? Let me see if I can figure it out. At that point, you've got enough time to get a shot.
Yep. Well, and I would tell you either one though. If you hear him running off, draw. You need to draw right then because that deer is going to probably be alert, and if it is a doe or whatever, you're probably still going to have a few seconds. Now, it's just giving yourself hopefully the best opportunity, but I would still be coming to full draw, anticipating what he's going to do.
For sure. I think one of the best things, I mean, when you're reading deer, you're watching them, deer stomping their, I mean, it's, Nick and I could give you a whole class on it just from the grizzly blind that we were hunting out of at the 80 when the wind was swirling on us.
Yeah.
We'd have deer that.
Or when you fell asleep.
Who fell asleep? He did.
And fall over.
And fell over. No, that was just flat ass scared them all.
Did they stomp their feet at that?
Oh, no, they ran.
Oh, they just cleared the field.
They just cleared the field.
Nick shoots his deer and then he's taking naps. We see how it is.
But we had deer that winded us one night, and I was like, there's no possible way. This is supposed to be a southwest wind or a northwest wind. I can't remember which we were hunting it with because you can get by with either. And these deer were west of us. And I was like, there's no way. But yet their reaction told me they were winding us. I mean, you see their head up. They weren't getting a good whiff because otherwise they would have just flat freaked out and left. But they were head up. Okay, what's wrong here? One starts stomping their feet. Then the next thing that they're going to do is they're going to start blowing. They're trying to get whatever it is that they can't figure out what it is. They want to get it to move or show itself so that they can confirm, oh, there it is. And so that's the body language that came before the reaction, because the reaction eventually was they got enough wind and then they all took off.
Yep. I think it.
You could bust a myth right there, too, if you wanted to.
What's that?
That deer stomping or any deer stomping their hooves is them trying to get you to move or do something. That's not even relatively close to what they're doing. They're stomping because they're using their interdigital gland, which is also alarming every other deer there that comes in right now or comes in later because they now know that there was danger there from that previous deer, and they can tell how much interdigital was left behind.
No, I think the head bob is them when they're trying to
they're trying to get you to think that they're feeding again. Like they're going
to go down like they're feeding, and then they pop up to look.
Yep.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying is
I think they're so smart.
Yeah.
A lot smarter than me this year, but
they were smart enough to fool Bryce one time.
Seriously?
Yeah, that's what allowed Ralph to live another year.
Oh my goodness! Simply that right there.
They had us pegged at a little. It wasn't a little buck. It was a decent buck. It was like 130, 140 inch deer, and he had two does with him. And I can't remember if he pegged us or one of the other ones pegged us. One of those deer pegged us, and so then they all pegged us, but they couldn't tell what we were, right? And so we did the 15-minute standoff with them, and they're staring at us, and then finally they were starting to chill, right? Well, I told him, because then I look up, and Ralph is like 90 yards from us. And so I was like, holy shit. And they're starting to calm down. Like, okay, this is good. And so I was like, I got to let Bryce know, though, because Ralph is on the hill and sees these does. And so they're coming right at us. So he's going to come right at us. So he's coming right at us to 15 yards. And so I tell Bryce, I'm like, hey, there's Ralph. And I hadn't even grabbed my bow yet because I knew these does were super alert, and they were doing that shit where I'm going to act like I'm feeding it. Oh, gotcha, And Bryce, friggin' one of them does that, and as soon as she does that, he moves the camera to get around the tree.
Done.
drills him and freaks out. Which we'll see if Bryce listens to this, because I don't know if he ever knew that I knew that he busted that. Because I was really upset, but I chose to just take the inner turmoil myself instead of letting him know that I know he just screwed that up on a 170-inch deer that we've been chasing for 26 days or whatever. But whatever, it's all good.
You're still buddies.
Yeah, we're still buddies. But now Bryce knows that I did know.
Now they're going to be having issues.
He's like, man, I thought I got away with one.
So reading them, and another part of that is understanding where I'm aiming.
Yeah.
Because where I'm aiming will depend on whether or not, I'll use, for instance, I aim at the lower third all the time. I'm a low shooter. That's what I'm shooting at. But when I feel like they're going to respond, it's even more imperative that I'm down there. Meaning they have some visual keys they're giving me that, things are gone wrong. A lot of times they see you draw. That'll be the one. Deer's walking by. The best scenario that you can have is that they go behind something, you can get to full draw, and then when they come out, you're just in a different position. They don't notice that. But sometimes that can't happen. And in my case anymore, I don't draw very smoothly anymore. My shoulders are so screwed up that trying to come to full draw takes a little bit for me, and so I'm getting pegged.
You just use a crossbow.
No, I don't want to use a crossbow. I would rather just get pegged. So nothing against you guys that are using crossbows, but I'm not going to use one. So, but these deer are coming out, and then so if you can read them and understand when, especially does seem to be even more visual. You can see they're more alerted, and they're like almost on pins and needles. Bucks will do the same thing, but it seems like the does are really bad about it.
Yep.
And then once they do that, they're going, so that whole ducking the string or, ducking an arrow, they're not ducking the arrow. They're simply running off.
Yeah,
and
they're reacting.
They're reacting, and that initial reaction is them bending their legs to lunge themselves out of there. And so when they do that, they're going down first. So understanding that and knowing I need to be aiming at the lower third of this deer.
Does that allow you? This could be a whole nother podcast in itself, which we're probably going to have to do it. But stopping deer.
Stopping deer?
Yes.
Stomping deer.
No, stopping them.
Okay,
Stopping them. Do you do it or not?
All the time.
You don't think it affects how you hit them?
What's the alternative?
Just have you not seen all the videos right now, including on your shorts right now, of dragon, about all kinds of people saying that if you can stay away from it, don't ever stop them.
Well, yeah,
never make a noise. Clearly, if they're stopping on their own,
right.
Yes, but they're avoiding even stopping them if they're like slowly walking, or they'd rather shoot them slowly walking or taking a step versus
I'll argue
stopping
that
them
all day
because
long.
It gives them the alert position, and I 100% disagree with that.
Yeah, that's not right.
And it also is going to give them a 6 to 8 to 10-inch shot farther back because your arrow is just not getting there. I mean, a lot of that depends on distance, how far away and how fast your bow is. But still, I can tell you from a lot of experience that at 20 yards, a deer walking at a normal pace and you got your pin where you want it, if you aren't leading that deer some, you're going to shoot back.
Oh, yeah.
The arrow
100%.
is just not like a rifle. Dan,
Plus,
you can't have
if
my drink.
I would think, to me, that is where that probably could be coming in is people that are shooting a lot further than they should be. If they're saying that, because
a lot of that too is
we're
people
talking
saying,
if they're 20 or 30 yards and you stop them and you should be able to hit the heart, so there should be no reason to be.
But at the same time, people will also tell you not to stop them when they're under 20 yards or under 15 yards, which is absurd to me as well. That's going off of people saying that they run off when they try to stop them or something.
Maybe if you go, and
all
they're
the
10
old
yards
people
away.
that are listening there that disagree with that will tell me, well, that's because you're young and you haven't had enough experience. But I've never had one run away.
Well, I think I qualified to say that I've got some experience.
Yeah, I would think so.
And I'm stopping every animal that I possibly can to shoot them with a bow and arrow.
Mm-hmm.
There's very few instances where I don't. And it's reading the deer when I don't that I feel like they're going to stop on their own or they're 7 or 8 yards or something like that they're so close that I can get away with, okay, I can just kind of put it an inch or two in front and be okay, but they got to be walking so slow. And
Well, I think a lot of times too, you got to at them louder than you think.
yeah,
Like Magnum, I almost yelled at him, but that was only because I knew I couldn't have him not hear me. I had one window to shoot him in, so I had to make sure that it was loud enough that he stopped right there.
So no, I'd rather shoot him in that alert position, because the other part of that alert position is, provided that you're doing it fairly quickly, they aren't really alert. They don't know what they heard.
Yeah,
they just know they heard something. What was that? And then you're shooting them.
Well, I hear a lot of people talking about that they duck more when they're just feeding, and I don't know if there's any information that it supports that or not.
There is information that supports it. I just don't know how much if they're just feeding. That's the other one, is sometimes guys will say, or that's another one that's going around right now, is if they're feeding, their head is down already, they will either wait for them to pick their head up, or they will even like man at them or something to get them to pick their head up. And in that situation, I'm putting an arrow through them before they even react, and they'll call me nuts for that one too. But I don't. The whole theory behind that is that they have to get their head down in order to duck and run, like what you refer to when they want to react and leave. They have to drop first. They have to get down in a position in order to be able to run away. Yes, so that's them dropping. They have to have their head down as well. Now, and not necessarily all the way down, but I think the point is that if they're feeding right there, that they already have their head in position where they can duck, versus if their head is up, they don't have as much time to be able to get their head down enough to duck and get out of there. And I have seen plenty of video representation of the difference in what it can be. I don't have an issue with shooting them with their head down, especially, and that's not from aiming excessively low either. That's just putting it top of heart and bottom of the lungs, basically. So, but we're in a rabbit hole. That's my fault. But that just goes with like stopping your deer and stuff like that, reading them. We could talk about that one more in depth on another podcast.
But I should look at some video and see if we can find some stuff that supports that. But
I can tell you one that I have right now that coincidentally, and I don't think it's coincidentally, Morphe was feeding. He had his head down, and he ducked far enough for like a freaking foot.
I'm trying to think of the 6 does I shot this year, if any of them were feeding. I can remember the first 4. I'm lost on the last 2.
Yeah, none of mine ducked that I can remember. They were, but like I said, I shoot low anyhow. So, and I had some that were like knew we were there, and not from me making a noise, just knew something was wrong.
Yep.
And I just aimed low, just let them duck right into it. I mean, so you end up going into, and that's a whole nother video when we talk about lower third, middle third, upper third.
Yep. All right.
But I think that we've covered reading deer, and I think Warren maybe said, or maybe you did, Easton, that we could sit here and talk about this for 3 or 4 hours, and it's just not going to do it justice until you start hunting and start seeing how they're reacting and how you're reacting. Because one of the biggest things, like you mentioned, she did the 15-minute stand, you've got to win that.
Yeah.
And what I'm talking about was what Warren was talking about was when the reaction you get from a deer is that it looks up in the tree and it sees you, but it hasn't winded you. That's the key. Then a lot of times it's a game is on now to see who's going to move first.
Yep.
And who's going to do something. And we have figured out, I guess, or you have to win that battle, because if you don't win that, it's over. I mean, they're going to freak out. And so you have to stand perfectly still and wait them out and wait them out and wait them out. And there'll be times when you're like, okay, I'm just going to yell at them. You want to jump out of the tree at them. Or
I was just going to say, I did that once this year.
You freaked out on them.
Well, I just gave her the finger. I just gave her the finger and made sure I was really clear so that she wasn't questioning it at all. And so she just finally ran off. Yeah.
Stay there, Dan. You're going to turn the podcast off.
All right. What was that? Did we have another topic that you'd mentioned?
Well, we're about an hour. What are we at?
What was the second?
Yeah, we're at an hour.
Secondary rut.
Secondary rut.
And basically, Dan Pohl had written in and said, one of my boys says there's no such thing as a secondary rut. Just wondering what you guys think.
Well, now we're getting brought in to settle debates between fathers and sons.
Well, that one's just biology.
And there is a secondary rut,
Yeah,
or there is a second rut.
Well, but I could possibly. You'd have to.
You don't have.
There's
context.
a secondary time for those younger does to come into heat, or does that didn't get bred to come into heat.
That's literal speaking. Like, yes, there is a secondary rut, but as far as the reaction,
what I'm saying
how
is
they act,
the rut. It's not like the first one.
Yeah,
you got bucks running around everywhere, all seeking does. I think that could you see if a hot doe walks by a buck, he's going to do everything he can to breed her, guaranteed.
Yeah. So, and that's what someone needs to understand. A buck can breed at any time of the year, with or without antlers, in velvet, out of velvet, doesn't matter. What he needs is the doe to be in heat in order to let him breed. So,
reluctantly let him breed.
Well, but so what Easton says, biologically, 28 days after, if she does not get bred, 28 days later, she's coming back into heat again. And there is, I don't know, maybe someone with a game farm might be able to tell us whether they will a third time, even if they are missed on the second round. Because occasionally you will see a buck chasing a doe in late December or January.
Can't some of those
fawns.
first-year fawns?
Yeah.
Not all of them, though.
No, it's got to be ones that mature faster, that were born early.
Do we have any idea, like, what is the percentage of that? Like, is it
I don't know.
50% or?
No, I don't know. I don't know.
You got an antler, Dan. It's the only one
so
you found all year.
So, yes, there is definitely a secondary estrus cycle.
Yes. Is it worth hunting? For sure. I mean, you can definitely see. Matter of fact, I saw a really good buck yesterday, and that would be in the window of us being just after.
It was December 8th here in Iowa.
Yeah, I mean, it was 2 days ago, so it would have been December 6th. But that is definitely in the window of 28 days after the peak of our rut was going on, that a doe could have gotten missed, because he had his nose down and he was looking hard, and wasn't paying any attention to me. He had that reaction to him, or he had that body language that there's a doe that's gone through here that is in heat, and he needs to find her.
Yep.
So, that would answer that question, or I believe that was the simple answer to that question.
I had one other thing on deer behavior real quick.
What's that?
I do think somewhat that you can tell some of these deer where they are comfortable and where their home range may be by how they behave.
Oh.
For instance, like Bullwinkle, when I found him, I don't know, I guess really it was kind of the first time. The second time I'd ever seen him out of a tree when he was 7. You and I hung the stand, and Bryce and I were sitting there, and he tells me, hey, there's like a 130-inch deer back here. And I was like, okay,
poor Bryce.
Sweet. When I put the binoculars on, I'm like, holy shit, that is not 130-inch deer. It's freaking Bullwinkle. And his whole demeanor was, he just
totally
walked right by, was smashing his scrape, was just, completely chill.
Then you go over to Spartan Hill, and you can see them never comfortable whatsoever.
That's so weird. We'll get to that in a minute, though, because you're so off topic of that. But so anyways, it's like, I remember even telling Bryce, like, I almost wonder if this deer is living here, because like the way he just seemed so at ease and so comfortable for especially as smart of a deer as he was to be that relaxed, and ended up putting a camera there, and sure as shit, he was living there. And so I do think that somewhat you can kind of get an indicator of how comfortable a deer is in the area. Now that's so broad and vague that I don't know how you could really determine how somebody could look at that and be like, okay, yeah, my deer was acting that way. I don't really know how you could do that. But what Easton's talking about is there's this hill we've called Spartan Hill that Nick and I were hunting at late season last year. There's a timber, and then there's this big long hill that's like
it's just grassy hill.
Yeah,
no
just
timber
a grassy
on it.
hill, and then there's more ag in the bottom. And all these deer, you'll see, like we have video of like 20 deer lined up. They'll all line up at the timber at the fence, and then they jump the fence
and
they
run
full sprint. And so
it's every one of them. Like every one of them.
So they nicknamed it Spartan Hill because it's like Sparta.
Yeah.
And down the hill we go.
I'm telling you, if you went and stood that fence line, you'd scared for your life because they are coming at you.
That's where we ended up shooting my deer, and it was hilarious because I turned around. I had never seen it in person. I just got them on my camera all the time of them doing that. And I'm like, yeah, that's definitely a thing. And with Nick and him videoing it from last year, this year we're sitting right there, and he goes, dude, there's a bunch of does coming. Watch this, man. And they come walking by us. He goes, look, they're doing it. And there's like 10 of them lined up. They all came in a line, but then they all line up and go hauling down
full
the freaking
full
hill.
bore.
I'm like, that is freaking hilarious. He's like, I told you, man.
That's weird. I don't know
It's
why
the proudest I've seen him showing me something in a while.
Because usually they never do it. They do.
Oh, yeah,
like,
you
be like
say
super
something.
slow and
Yeah.
no,
Yeah,
they
that was
full on
good.
all of them.
All right. I think we're done with it. We've beat this dead horse or beat this horse to death. So, all right, you got your wacky fact ready. You said people were sending you. You using someone's wacky
People
fact?
are sending me them. Yes.
Oh, geez.
So
You guys need to do better at work. If you're having to do Warren's wacky facts.
no, that's because it's a fun section. So we're gonna get two today. One that I provided and one that that Logan provided.
He's
said,
just on it.
Yeah, he did. He said, "You know that a whale's heart is the size of a car and can be detected from over 2 miles away."
Wow, I did not know that one.
That's
I
pretty
know
crazy.
a lot about whales, I feel like, and that is not one I knew.
I wonder what kind of car.
What
Just a car, man.
Yeah.
Like an
thought
El
this one-
Camino?
I thought this one was kind of funny. It took the creator of the Rubik's Cube 1 month to figure out how to solve the Rubik's Cube.
Why? I wonder how he knew that it was going to...
I don't know either. Isn't that crazy?
Well, how do you create something like that?
I don't know.
Is that yours?
Holy smokes. Yeah, here's another one, though. An ant's sense of smell is stronger than a dog's.
Well, you ain't never going to kill them.
Well, that doesn't.
Dude, I wonder if you... Aren't they really smart, too?
They're super, super strong. They can carry 6 times their own body weight.
I am getting a leash, and I'm going to figure out how to train an ant.
Oh, my
Yeah.
Lord.
Imagine that for blood trailing.
Yeah.
That would be freaking gnarly.
That would be
Just
just have
a
this leash
fishing
and this
line.
little tiny
Be
thing.
slow
Yeah.
just be friggin' slow as hell.
Well, if it works.
Hey, I've curb stomped them before. They move pretty quick. I also
Whatever.
ate some as a kid.
Yeah, I think everybody has.
Yeah, they really don't have much flavor.
No, they're just kind of gross.
Maybe that's
All
just
right,
us.
guys. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to what I think was a better than usual topic, because I feel like we got into some like pretty cool stuff there talking, because it's something that we could go on and on, but you just have to experience it. So we look forward to hearing your guys' feedback. So continue to leave the reviews on Spotify, on Apple, and on YouTube, and we will try to answer some of you guys on YouTube.
Not we. Dad he's like, oh, I know now. I'm going to go answer all of them.
I just need someone to show me how to do it, and then I'll go do it. We got
leave
that.
reviews on Shopify too. We appreciate that one.
Yeah, actually, yeah, you really can.
Which
I was
is
trying
our
to think if
race
you could
hunting
do
website.
a podcast one on there. Anyways.
All right,
good?
we're out of here.